Now, when I told people I was going to do a DVD on the Caro Kann exchange variation, I got asked, well, what do you do about Queen c7? And it's this move, after e4, c6, d4, d5, e takes d5, c takes d5, bishop d3, knight c6, c3, and now this move. And this is a move that's been recommended in a number of repertoire books on the Caro Kann. You know, people have quite liked this Queen c7 manoeuvre, and it's troubled White essentially because he's currently unable to put his bishop on f4. Now, this game is actually very interesting because Jovanka Huska wrote a repertoire book on the Caro Kann, giving Queen c7 as a move that just solved Black's problems. But in this game, Stuart Conquest first of all chose to play the exchange variation against her and then got a very good position. And what he did after Queen c7 is he just played this move, h3. Now, what's the point of h3? Well, basically, all White is doing is he's saying to Black, well, I'm just going to stop you putting a bishop here. I know I can't put my bishop on f4, but where are you going to bring yours out to? Because I'm covering this square with my bishop, this square with a pawn, so I don't think you've got a good square to develop the bishop onto. Now, this means that the plans where Black brings the bishop out and plays e6 and whatever are not possible. What you can do with Black are, well, you could, for example, play this sort of setup that we've seen, but as we saw in the game between Polgar and Hausrath, it's quite passive for Black if you don't get this bishop out. The other alternative is to try and play a kingside fianchetto, and that's what Huska does. She plays pawn to g6. And the idea now for Black is just to play bishop g7. This knight may come out to f6, or alternatively out to h6. But it's a position that's, you know, I mean, it's all right for Black, but it's nothing special, and certainly doesn't represent a refutation of the exchange line. So when Black played g6, well, now Conquest did something very interesting. He brought his knight to e2, and he's doing a couple of things with this. First of all, he's supporting this bishop coming out to f4 on the next move, so he's planning to win a tempo on Black's queen. The second thing is that if Black plays an exchanging manoeuvre with bishop out to f5, then I think that this knight is going to be rather well placed on e2 compared with the f3 square. I think if White had brought this knight out to f3 here, then bishop f5 would be quite a good idea. After takes, pawn takes, a Black knight might head to f6 and then e4, and White will have a lot of trouble trying to drive that knight away with f3, because then, say, g3 would be weak and all sorts of things like that. So this is a very clever move by Conquest, knight to e2, intending bishop to f4. Now, if Black played bishop f5 here, then White can take, and after Black takes, then White would probably win this tempo first of all with bishop f4. But then this pawn, I think, is much more likely to become a problem later in the game with this knight positioned on e2 rather than f3. It could, for example, come out to g3 and then maybe later come into the h5 square. So after knight e2, Jovanka Huska decided to defend against bishop f4 by exchanging this bishop off, and went here. But to me, it doesn't look that great. I mean, you know, Black plays g6 and bishop h6, exchanges this bishop off, but then is left with weak dark squares around the king side. So after a few moves, White achieved really quite a promising position. Knight f6, queen comes into h6, rook g8. Now the knight comes round this way, knight d8, rook e1, usual stuff, rook to the half-open e-file, knight out here, rook e5, getting ready to double on the e-file. This rook move, by the way, it stops black conducting further exchanges with queen f4. So it physically prevents queen f4. Bishop d7, knight d2, castles, rook a e1, and white's developing very strong pressure here. Now black castles over this side of the board and brings his king to b8, but my preference is quite clear. I just prefer white's position here, and I think what Stuart Conquest did in this game is just a very good antidote to the queen c7 line. Now I'm not going to, this is quite a long game, we've got 68 moves and this is a fairly short DVD. I'm not going to show you the rest of this one, but in this position white is clearly better, I think. It's not an easy position to win, but later on his knight came into e5 and he maintained pressure on the king side, and it's a nice game for white. And this idea that he used of depriving this bishop of squares with h3 and then on g6 bringing the knight to e2 to prepare bishop f4, I think it's a nice idea. And if queen c7 is the worst thing that black can do against the exchange Caro, then this opening is well and truly in business and represents quite a nice line for white to play.